Vlogmas day 10. Today I am going to be sharing every single book I have read this year. So I have read a total of 23 books, and I'm also going to be using my Goodreads app as a point of reference because I did listen to some audiobooks and I don't want to forget about those. So go ahead and grab yourself a coffee, a butterbeer, whatever it is that you would like, and let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first book I read this year was The Fill-In Boyfriend by Casey West. So this follows the story of a girl named Gia, and her boyfriend dumps her right before prom, and she finds this guy in the school parking lot and asks him to be her fill-in prom date or fill-in boyfriend. And this was the first Casey West book I had ever read, and it still remains my favorite Casey West book ever. And the second book I read this year was also by Casey West. This is Lucky in Love, and this is about a girl named Maddie who on a whim purchases a lottery ticket, and to her surprise, she wins the lottery. And she isn't sure who she can trust except for her coworker at the zoo, Seth. So this was a really, really cute read. Oh, and I guess I should probably tell you guys the ratings I give these books. So I gave both of these 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read was actually an audiobook. This was My Lady Jane, and there are 3 authors on this one. So it's written by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. So I listened to this audiobook for a readathon I did earlier in the year. That feels like a lifetime ago. That actually doesn't even feel like this year. But anyway, I was actually really intimidated by the size of this book, or in this case, the length of the audiobook. It is a rather large book or a rather long story, but it ended up going by so quickly because I loved it so much. So this one is kind of like a historical fiction and fantasy wrapped into one. It is the not entirely true story of Lady Jane Grey. It honestly had me laughing from the very start, and I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 star rating. The next book is also an audiobook I listened to. This is Moment of Truth by Casey West. Unfortunately, this wasn't my favorite Casey West book. It just really wasn't for me. I'm a very character-driven reader, and I had a tough time connecting with these characters. So this one was only a 2 out of 5 star rating for me. And the next book I read is also another Casey West book. This is Listen to Your Heart, and this is about a girl named Kate. And Kate is on the quieter side, and I definitely connected with her on that. And her best friend convinces her to join the high school's podcast, and it turns out that Kate really enjoys being a host, and she really finds herself through this book. It's a very self-discovery, coming-of-age story, and there is also a really sweet love story. Kate meets this guy named Diego, and I honestly wish that there was an entire series on this couple because they are both so cute. They were really sweet together, and their chemistry was very natural. And also, I did switch back and forth between the physical copy and the audiobook, and I have to say the audiobook is really good. I honestly did not want this one to end, and I gave this one a 5 out of 5 star rating. And the first thriller I read this year was One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. This was a buddy read I did with my friend Taylor, and oh my gosh, this book had me guessing the entire time, and I was very surprised at who ended up being my favorite character. I had a lot of fun with this one, so if you're looking for a really good mystery, I definitely recommend. Oh, and I gave that one 5 out of 5 stars. And then I did a little reread of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. The next book I read was Lily and the Octopus by Stephen Rowley, and this was, this one was the most heartbreaking book I read this year. It was definitely an emotional roller coaster, and if you have ever felt an immense amount of love towards an animal, then this one will really hit you right in the feels. I definitely cried while reading this book, but it was a really amazing read. I actually discovered this book because it was a Hufflepuff recommended book, and I can definitely see why. And Ted definitely had a love for his dog in the same way that Newt loves all of his creatures. And this was just a really powerful reminder of how precious life can be. And I gave this one a 4 out of 5 star rating. Next up, I read The Upside of Falling by Alex Light. And this was such a cute, fluffy read. And this was another fake dating trope story, one of my favorites. So I definitely enjoyed this one. And honestly, I want to read this one again because it was just so cute. And I forget the rating I gave this. I did give this a 5 out of 5 star rating. Next, I read or listened to the audiobook of By Your Side by Casey West. And this was another miss for me. I feel like with Casey West books, they are a little hit and miss for me. I either love it or it's just a little but this one was one of those that I didn't really get super into. I thought I was going to because it's about a girl who accidentally gets locked inside of a library with some guy who she unexpectedly falls for, and the premise of the book sounded so cute and I was so excited, but the main character wasn't a book lover, so I feel like being locked in a library and not really loving the books kind of made it less exciting to read about. So overall, I gave this a 2 out of 5 star rating. Next up is my favorite book that I read this year. This was the book that I really needed for 2020, and that is The Happiness Advantage by Sean Achor. This was the first nonfiction book I read for 2020, and this talks about the importance of positive thinking and how it can actually change your life and the way that you see the world around you. It was really, really fascinating, and I recommend this to absolutely anyone and everyone. And I also switched back and forth between the physical copy and the audiobook, and I really enjoyed both. I do really like to have a physical copy of nonfiction books so I can highlight my favorite points, and I ended up giving this one a 5 out of 5 star rating, obviously, since this was my favorite read for this year. The next book I read was The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. And this was also one of those books I discovered through Hufflepuff recommended books. This one was so whimsical and magical and fun, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 star rating. And then I discovered the Selection series by Kiera Cass, and oh my goodness, this was so fun to read. I was not expecting to love this as much as I did. This is kind of like The Hunger Games meets The Bachelor, which I don't even watch The Bachelor, which is why I was so surprised I loved this, but it just really hooks you in and it's so fun. So this story is about 35 girls who are in a competition to win the crown, and of course only one girl can win. And I ended up giving this one a 5 out of 5 star rating, and then I quickly went on to the next book. This is The Elite by Kiera Cass, and I did enjoy the first book a little bit more than the second book, but I did like seeing the development of the friendship between America and Marley, and I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 star rating. And then I quickly jumped into the third book, which is called The One, and I really liked this one, but I felt like the love triangle went on for a little too long. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5 star rating. I was happy with the overall ending. The next book I read is The 4 Agreements. It is a quick read full of wisdom and light, and I was able to read this in one sitting. So if you're looking for a small but mighty read, I would really recommend this. So the 4 agreements are: 1, be impeccable with your word; 2, don't take anything personally; 3, don't make assumptions; and 4, do your best. I also like how the author said that our words are our magic. So you can either cast good spells or bad spells, and let us always choose Lemos. And I gave this one a 4 out of 5 star rating. And next up, I finally finished Always and Forever, Lara Jean, and I had put off finishing this book for a really long time because I wasn't ready to say goodbye to Lara Jean and Peter Kay, because those characters hold a really special place in my heart and I just didn't want it to end. And I gave this one a 5 out of 5 star rating. And next up, the biggest book I read this year. This is Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. And who knew we were getting a new Twilight book this year? This really takes me back to high school, like sophomore year of high school, when all of the girls were reading the Twilight series. So this was a very nostalgic read for me. I loved going back to Forks and I loved seeing things from Edward's point of view. You really got to see more of his family and it was really, really interesting. And even though I am technically Team Jacob, I still loved this and I gave this a 4 out of 5 star rating. And for the fall, I read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and oh my gosh, this was one of my favorite books I read this year. This is another young adult thriller and I read this in one sitting. I could not put it down. So if you like a good mystery, this one is incredible. I gave this a 5 out of 5 star rating. Hey guys, so I am currently editing this video and I realized I completely forgot to mention that I also read The Shadows by Alex North, and that is the same author as The Whisper Man, and I actually have a reading vlog on it that I filmed back in October, so I'm gonna link that down below. Anyway, back to the video. Then I read One Day in December by Josie Silver. I recently did a reading vlog on this. This is such a fun book to read during this time of year, and I gave this one a 5 out of 5 star rating. And then the most recent book I read this year is The Two Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver, the same author as One Day in December. And this is one of those very bittersweet books, but it is really, really good. And I also gave this a 5 out of 5 star rating. So those are all the books I've read this year, and my camera battery is now flashing. So I will see you guys soon for Vlogmas Day 11. Bye!